Home is where they send you. The rise and fall of orphanages. The rise of orphanages. In the 19th century, many children in the United States were orphans, or children who had lost their parents. Others had parents who were poor or could not care for them properly. Some of them were homeless and lived on the streets. Orphanages became a popular way to try to help orphans as well as poor and homeless children. By 1900, there were close to 1,000 orphanages in the United States. Some were run by county governments, others were run by church groups or other private charities. All were founded as a way to keep children safe from poverty, crime, and danger on the streets. More than half of the children in orphanages came from poor families who were convinced or forced to give them up. The families hoped their children would be educated or trained so that they could have a better life. Many orphanages worked hard to help the young people in their care. They tried to find wealthy families that would adopt the children. Some orphanages provided children with an education. Others taught trades like masonry, bricklaying, plumbing, and sewing. Orphanages were founded with good intentions, but they had problems. Life in an orphanage was tough. Sometimes up to 1,000 children lived together under one roof. They were given uniforms and sometimes their heads were shaved. They were forced to march in silence from chore to chore. Older children often bullied the younger ones. In some orphanages, children were punished for speaking their native languages. They were not allowed to observe family traditions or ethnic customs. Young people in many orphanages were fed poorly and were constantly hungry. Once, children in an orphanage in Cleveland, Ohio, were so desperate for good food that they staged an escape to raid a local bakery. Some were adopted by families only to become household servants, farm workers, or factory workers. Adopted children were often separated from their siblings. Orphan trains. Another way that people at the time dealt with homeless children was to send them westward on orphan trains. The police rounded up those that were poor, orphaned, or had run away from home. They were put aboard trains that stopped at western towns where they stood on platforms and waited to be adopted. More than 150,000 children were sent west aboard orphan trains. In fact, about 2 million American descendants of these children. The first orphan train left New York in 1854 and set out for Dowagiac, Michigan. Officials sent advance notice to residents there requesting homes. The children were bathed, groomed, and dressed in a set of new clothes. The train made several stops along the way, and at each stop the children were looked over. When they were selected for adoption, they were sent to a new home. Sometimes brothers and sisters were adopted together, but more often than not they were separated, never to meet again. Still, that first orphan train found a home for each child aboard and was deemed a success. That led to further orphan trains and even baby trains, which brought newborns and toddlers to families that requested them. Orphan trains were meant to help children, but the fates of some were less than ideal. Inspectors were supposed to check up on children in their new homes, but these inspections rarely took place. Some children wound up in loving families, but others were abused by the people who took them in. Some were forced into a life of hard labor and were no better off than they had been on the streets. Also, orphan trains often separated children from brothers, sisters, and also other relatives who had loved them. For these reasons, orphan trains eventually fell out of favor. The end of orphanages. In the 20th century, orphanages and orphan trains were slowly phased out. By the 1960s, most public orphanages had closed. They were replaced by a government system of child welfare. In this system, social workers try to support children in their own environment by giving aid to families with children. If the family is having problems, children may live with relatives or foster parents instead. They may also live in group homes with adult supervision. Some group homes provide services for children with special needs. The goal of most group homes, however, is to move children out of the home and into a real family. While orphanages fed and housed many needy children, they often failed to provide them with love. Many people believe that the system we have today is better than the old orphanage system. They believe that the new system is better at finding families for young children and giving them a chance at a better life. Sometimes children gain help within their own families, other times they are adopted or they enter foster care. In either case, children are a part of a family they can call their own. The child welfare system is still not perfect, but in most cases it gives needy children a real chance at a new start.